I want to take you to a really freezing, desolate rock. This is about 20 miles out in the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh man, just nowhere you'd ever want to be.
Exactly. It is December in the year 1900. The wind is just howling, the icy water is thrashing against these jagged cliffs, and there is absolutely nowhere to run.
Right.
Now, I want you to imagine three experienced men standing on that rock, surrounded by just, well, endless black water. And then, without a trace, without a single sound, they simply cease to exist.
It's basically the ultimate locked room mystery. Right. Except, the room is an entire island and the walls are the ocean itself.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So our mission today for this deep dive is to dig into the official 1901 Northern Lighthouse Board investigation reports.
But real primary sources.
Right, the reports, the recovered maritime logbooks, and those original testimonies from the relief crew. We want to find out what actually happens when human logic just hits a complete dead end.
Because there's a lot of folklore here, but we need the facts.
Exactly. We are going to strip away all those centuries of sailor superstition and look strictly at the hard facts, the physical evidence they left behind. So, okay, let's unpack this, starting with the sheer geographical reality of where these men were actually stationed.
Yeah, before we even begin to theorize about how three grown men vanished, you really have to understand the incredibly unforgiving environment they were standing in.
It's not a casual beach town.
Not at all. We are talking about the Flannan Isles. It's this rugged, nasty cluster of rocks off the western coast of Scotland. And sailors ominously refer to them as the Seven Hunters.
The Seven Hunters. I mean, that sounds like a place you actively try to avoid, not somewhere you decide to build a workplace.
Exactly. And for centuries, sailors genuinely feared these islands. Local fishermen, they refused to even speak certain words while sailing near them because of these ancient legends about supernatural forces.
Wow. So they were already terrified of it.
Right. But by 1899, the Northern Lighthouse Board decided, well, we can't rely on legends. Ships are wrecking. We need to protect them from these highly dangerous waters.
So they just blasted into the rock.
Yeah, they blasted the rock and built a lighthouse on the absolute highest point of the main island, which is Eilean Moor. It stood 23 meters tall, just constantly battered by the Atlantic.
Okay, so who exactly was manning this station? Because if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, maybe these were just some green recruits who panicked in a bad storm, we really need to clarify who these guys actually were.
Oh, they were the exact opposite of green recruits. The head keeper was James Ducat. He was 43 years old, and he was known across the whole board for being totally unshakable.
Like he'd seen it all.
He had seen every kind of weather the ocean could possibly throw at him. And working under him was Thomas Marshall, who was 28, another really seasoned keeper.
Okay, so two veterans. What about the third guy?
The third man was Donald McArthur. Now, he was actually a relief keeper, standing in for a sick colleague, but McArthur was known as this tough, hardened sailor. He had spent years navigating these unforgiving waters.
Which, honestly, makes the timeline of what happened next so deeply unsettling.
Yeah, it really does.
Because the last officially normal day was December 15th. Passing ships confirmed the light was working perfectly. Everything seemed completely operational.
Right, business as usual.
But then let's jump ahead to December 26th. The relief ship, which is called the Hesperus, arrives carrying a man named Joseph Moore. He's scheduled to relieve one of the keepers. And from the very moment that ship drops anchor, the crew just knows something has gone terribly wrong.
Well, yeah, because the visual cues of a catastrophic failure were immediate. When a relief ship approaches a functioning lighthouse, there's a very strict sequence of events.
Like a checklist.
Exactly. The keepers are supposed to fly a flag to signal, hey, we see your ship.
And there was no flag.
No flag at all. And they're supposed to be waiting down at the landing to catch the lines.
But the landing was totally empty.
Completely empty. But the most alarming thing of all, the crane used to hoist heavy supply crates off the boats was completely tied down and secured.
Okay, let's break down why that crane is so important. Because if you don't know maritime protocol, an untied crane might just seem like a minor oversight, like someone forgot to put something away.
Oh, no. In the entire profession of lighthouse keeping, routine is literally survival. Leaving a crane tied down when you know a scheduled relief ship is arriving is not a casual mistake.
It's deliberate.
Yes. A tied-down crane explicitly signals that the landing is officially closed to resupply. That is only ever done in the absolute most severe emergencies.
Wow.
So deviation like that, it's a blaring, deafening alarm that the human element of this system has entirely broken down.
It really It makes me think of a deep space station.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. If you consider the absolute technological void these men were living in back in 1900, I mean, there are no radios, there are no emergency beacons, no helicopters to swoop in.
They are completely off the grid.
Yeah, Eileen Moore isn't some cabin in the woods where you can just hike over to the next town. It is like being in orbit. If the communication relay goes dark and the docking bay is locked, the astronauts inside are utterly alone.
Yeah.
You can't just step outside for a casual walk.
You're trapped.
Exactly. Put yourself in Joseph Moore's shoes for a second. Rowing ashore in absolute silence, knowing his quote-unquote space station has gone totally dark. The psychological weight of that isolation is just chilling.
And that isolation really builds the tension as Moore makes that long, steep climb up the cliff path. He finally reaches the main doors of the lighthouse.
And they're closed, right?
The heavy external doors are closed, yeah. But crucially, they are unlocked. So he pulls them open and just steps inside the tower.
He steps inside, and what he finds is just this frozen tableau. Like the kitchen table is set, there is a meal that had been partially prepared,
Yeah, the remnants are literally just sitting there on the table.
and the beds in the other room are completely unmade.
It looks like an entirely ordinary morning that was just suddenly interrupted. But when investigators later really scrutinized the room, the anomaly started to jump out.
Like a chair.
Notice the chair at the kitchen table. There is a single chair, knocked over, pushed back violently.
Right, which paints this vivid picture of someone sitting there maybe eating and then standing up in this frantic immediate rush.
Exactly. But the most glaring physical evidence has to be the coats.
Oh, the coats are huge. Because when Moore checked the entryway, 2 of the 3 heavy oilskin weather coats were still hanging right there on their hooks. Only one was missing.
And to understand the gravity of that, you have to understand North Atlantic winter survival.
Right.
Lighthouse keepers simply did not go outside in December without those heavy oilskin coats, especially anywhere near the perilous cliff edges.
It'd be suicide.
Leaving the safety of that tower without that gear was just inviting hypothermia or death.
Which means at least 2 of these veteran seamen went out into the freezing Scottish winter completely unprotected.
Yeah.
And I really have to push back against the initial assumptions people made at the time. You know, that this was just a simple, tragic slip and fall accident on some wet rocks.
People always want an easy answer.
But if these men knew the extreme, lethal danger of the sea, what sound, what alarm, or what shock could possibly compel an experienced keeper to just sprint outside without his weather coat?
It makes no sense.
It completely defies basic human survival instinct. I mean, your brain has to entirely bypass logic and go straight into a blind fight or flight response to leave that coat behind in December.
Something absolutely triggered a massive panic. But what's fascinating here is that the timeline gets even more confusing when you look at the maintenance of the lighthouse itself.
What do you mean?
Well, when Moore checked the massive light mechanism up in the lens room, it was completely clean. The lamps were trimmed and the oil fountains were totally full.
So they were actively doing their jobs right up until the end.
Exactly. Yet down in the living quarters, the wall clock had inexplicably stopped.
Wait, why is a stopped clock such a vital clue here?
I mean,
Clocks stop all the time.
You have to understand how lighthouses operated in the 1900s. They weren't just electric bulbs you flipped on with a switch. They relied on these massive descending weights.
Oh, like a grandfather clock.
Literally a giant clockwork mechanism that ran down the center of the tower to rotate the heavy glass lens. Keeping the wall clock wound and keeping the lighthouse lens rotating were mechanically and culturally linked duties.
So you don't do one without the other.
Never. The fact that the light was meticulously maintained for the next shift, but the wall clock is allowed to just die, creates a bizarre psychological contradiction.
I see what you mean. The oiled mechanism shows this strict, focused adherence to duty.
Right.
But then the knocked over chair, the coats left behind, and the dead clock show just unthinking chaos.
Exactly. And the physical evidence inside the tower only tells us how they left the room in a chaotic rush. But to understand the terrifying state of their minds in the days before they vanished, investigators had to turn to the written evidence. They found the station's logbook.
And this is where the story really shifts from a simple missing persons case into something just deeply disturbing.
Yeah, because keepers were required to record weather and operational notes regularly. I want to read the entries recorded by the head keeper, James Ducat.
The unshakable guy.
Right. December 12th. Severe winds, the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years.
Wow.
Ducat also notes that Donald McArthur, again, a hardened sailor, had been crying all day. and Thomas Marshall was unusually quiet.
Just let that sink in for a moment. You have a seasoned professional seaman, a man who has made his living on rough, dangerous waters, weeping continuously for an entire day just because of the weather.
It's unheard of. And the next entry is even more grim. December 13th, storm still raging, all three of us praying. Then we get to December 14th. There's absolutely no entry. The page is just blank. Finally, on December 15th, a brief final note states that the light was lit at the proper time. And after that, well, nothing.
The investigators reading this must have felt just a cold dread, but they immediately ran into a massive, frankly, impossible contradiction.
Weather reports.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. When they checked with the mainland weather station just 20 miles away, and when they pulled the maritime logs of passing ships in that exact area on December 12th and 13th, the weather was completely calm.
Clear skies.
There was no severe storm.
And that is the core of the psychological weight here. The physical documentation from multiple outside sources says the sky was totally clear, but the handwritten account of 3 doomed men says they were experiencing an apocalyptic tempest.
It's like finding a car crashed into a tree. You look at the dashboard, and the speedometer is stuck at 100 miles per hour.
Yeah.
But then you touch the engine, and it is stone cold. You look at the road, and there are absolutely no skid marks.
The physical evidence completely contradicts the narrative evidence.
Exactly. Were these 3 men experiencing some kind of collective, localized psychological quake? Or did a hyper-localized, anomalous weather event hit only their specific rock and literally nowhere else?
Think about the training these men had. Professional keepers are rigorously conditioned to endure severe storms. It is fundamentally their job description.
Yeah, you don't get the job if you're afraid of wind.
Exactly. For them to document their experience with such desperation, resorting to continuous prayer and weeping, it implies an existential terror. Weather alone usually does not trigger that kind of despair in men with decades of maritime experience.
No way.
It heavily suggests they were facing something they fundamentally did not understand, something that broke their mental fortitude before it ever broke their physical safety.
Well, faced with a ghost storm in the logbook and a perfectly intact lockdown tower, the investigators desperately needed to ground this disappearance in something tangible. So, Superintendent Robert Muirhead personally traveled to Eilean Moor to examine the island's perimeter.
And Muirhead's inspection of the island's west side actually revealed staggering destruction.
What did he find?
He found iron railings 33 meters above sea level, completely bent and twisted as if struck by an unimaginable force.
33 meters up?
Yeah. A massive stone weighing over a ton had been violently shifted from its position. A concrete storage box, heavily secured into the rock, had been ripped away entirely, and these heavy supply ropes were found tangled and thrown high up onto the cliffs.
So based on that sheer physical destruction, Superintendent Muirhead officially concluded that a massive rogue wave had struck the island, crested the 33-meter cliff, and swept all 3 men into the sea, and officially, he just closed the case.
Right. And to put that into perspective, rogue waves are these freak walls of water that can occasionally appear without warning in the North Atlantic.
Constructive interference, right?
Exactly. Where multiple wave patterns align to create a singular massive crest. A wave reaching 33 meters, that's over 100 feet high, carries enough hydraulic pressure to easily bend iron and move a 1-ton boulder.
I mean, I understand the fluid dynamics of a rogue wave, but I really have to push back hard against Muirhead's official conclusion here.
It's a bit too neat.
It feels like throwing a neat bow on a very messy package. Sure, a freak 100-foot wave explains the bent iron railings on the west cliff, but it fundamentally fails to explain almost everything else.
Yep.
It doesn't explain the phantom storm in the logbook days prior when the mainland said the weather was fine. It doesn't explain why the clock stopped inside a completely undamaged tower.
Not at all.
And it certainly doesn't explain why 2 experienced men would run out into a Scottish winter without their coats right before a giant wave supposedly hit.
The glaring inconsistencies in that rogue wave theory are exactly why alternative theories have thrived for over a century now. Investigators and historians have repeatedly tried to reconstruct that final morning.
Like Alternative Theory 1.
Right. Alternative Theory 1 suggests a more grounded, tragic sequence. Basically, one man was outside working near the cliff edge and fell into the turbulent water. The other 2, hearing his cries or seeing him go over, jumped up from the kitchen table, knocking over the chair in their frantic rush, and sprinted outside to save him without grabbing their coats.
And then,
While trying to pull him up, all three were just swept away by the rough waters.
I mean, that perfectly explains the knocked over chair and the coats being left behind. It fits the panic,
Yeah, it does.
but again, it entirely ignores the weeping and praying in the logbook from days before.
Yeah,
What drove them to that state of mind prior to someone slipping?
exactly. Then you have alternative theory 2, which suggests a murder or a murder-suicide scenario. Basically, the isolation simply broke one of them.
So one of them just snapped.
The theory posits that the pressure of the environment caused one keeper to attack the other two, throw their bodies into the sea, and then jump in after them.
But look at the psychological profiles you gave us earlier. These were not unstable amateurs. Furthermore, Moore and Muirhead found zero physical evidence of a struggle.
Right, the room was clean.
There was no blood, no broken glass, no weapons, nothing to suggest a violent brawl inside that tight circular room. The unmade beds and set table look like an interrupted morning, not a crime scene.
Which brings us to alternative theory 3, something else.
Ah, the supernatural angle.
Yes, this theory taps directly into those ancient legends of the Seven Hunters and the deeply held beliefs of the local Scottish fishermen. The idea that Eilean Moor is a place where the boundary between worlds is thin, and the men encountered a force completely outside the realm of natural weather.
The supernatural angle always surfaces when human logic runs out of runway.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, consider how human beings process terrifying unsolved mysteries. We desperately want to assign logic to chaotic events.
We need it to make sense.
We cling to theories like a freak rogue wave or a tragic rescue attempt because the alternative is just too horrifying to accept. The idea that 3 hardened men could be swallowed by an invisible storm or driven mad by an unseen force, it threatens our basic understanding of reality. We build narratives that fit our established rules of physics because the unknown is intolerable.
Because if the rules of physics don't apply out there on that freezing rock, then none of us are truly safe from the unpredictable chaos of the world.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this right now?
I think the vanishing at Eilean Moor serves as a chilling reminder of human vulnerability in the face of nature. We build massive 23-meter concrete towers, we invent complex clockwork lenses, and we establish strict maritime protocols, all to create this illusion of safety and control over the wild.
An illusion is all it is.
But that illusion can vanish in an instant. Today, the light at Flannan Isles still operates, flashing its warning to passing ships. But it is entirely automated. Ultimately, human beings simply refuse to live permanently on that rock anymore. We surrendered it back to the ocean. Building the machine to run itself is a profound admission of our own limits. We removed the human elements so we wouldn't have to face whatever it is that lives out there.
Well, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final puzzle piece, something to mull over that builds on the evidence we just discussed.
Oh, what's that?
If these 3 men recorded a terrifying, mind-breaking phantom storm on December 12th and 13th, weeping and praying for their lives.
Right.
But then the logbook shows they calmly and routinely lit the lamp on the 15th. What if the mystery of the logbook and the mystery of their disappearance are 2 completely unrelated events?
Wow. That is a deeply unsettling thought. It severs the cause from the effect entirely.
What if they actually survived whatever invisible terror broke their minds on the 12th, only to fall victim to something entirely mundane, like a simple slip on wet rocks days later? 2 completely separate mysteries overlapping on one desolate rock, confounding investigators for over a century.
Just incredible to think about.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the unknown. We encourage you to keep questioning the things that seem impossible and to always look closer at the mysteries that history tries to neatly file away. If you enjoyed unpacking this mystery with us, please make sure to subscribe to my Clips YouTube channel for more incredible deep dives. Until next time, stay curious.